Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the UCM Podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Davis here, and I've got an awesome guest for you today. Dr. Noel Lloyd from 5-Star Management is back on the podcast. Noel, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Been on the podcast several times over the years, and excited to talk about our subject today because this is something that sorely needed within the entire chiropractic profession, but definitely within upper cervical. Still, I've been doing this now for almost 12 years. And unfortunately, we still have way too many solo practices out there, way too many doctors who are not hiring associates, who are not bringing in associates. And so I'm on a mission to change that. And I know Noel is too, and he's been doing this for a lot longer than I have. And so I'm excited to talk about associates today with Noel. But before we get into that, Noel, for anybody out there that doesn't know you, please give us a little background on you, your introduction to our audience.
So I grew up in Everett, Washington, which is a small mill town north of Seattle. And at age 5, I fell headfirst off the monkey bars and knocked myself out. Got a concussion. And I was taken to the hospital. They said, watch him, he'll be okay. But I got sick and I stayed sick for about a year. And in the family album, there were pictures of me sitting on the couch on a blanket with in a family party, and I was sick, or at the park at a picnic, lying on a blanket, and I was sick. And so finally, this woman cornered my mother in a supermarket and begged her with tears in her eyes to take me to a chiropractor. So I remember walking up to Haynes and Thompson chiropractors, Palmer HIO chiropractors. And I was 5 or 5.5, 6 years old. And I had mom on one side and grandma on the other side. And I walked up those stairs and they were so big, those huge stairs. And I went back years later, decades later, and they're little teeny stairs, but my 5-year-old brain. I got my first chiropractic adjustment and I didn't like it. I screamed like a banshee because it hurt. I thought it hurt. But by the time I got back down to the car, my dad was driving home and he said to my mother, he said, I think we've got our son back. Because I had one of those miracle adjustments. And it was because of my chiropractic adjustment that the whole family, all the Griffiths, all the Lloyds, all the Ludwigs, started to pile in on chiropractic offices, made a decision to be a chiropractor when I was 11 with my dad's prompting, and started practicing in Washington when I was 22. I built up a large clinic group, but then I got bashed in a ski accident, and then I couldn't practice anymore. And so I had a choice, and that was either I was going to get out of chiropractic and I didn't know what I would do, or I was going to stay in chiropractic and I was to develop associates. And so over the years, over the decades, I've developed over 70 plus associates. And I did 10 clinics where I sold each one of those clinics to successful associates. And today, one of the things that I do is I help other chiropractors, busy, successful chiropractors. I help them do what I did, which was not get injured, but find associates and develop them in what we call the win-win model.
Yeah. And that's awesome. So, just a little background on Noel and I. When I was in practice, before I was injured, Noel was one of my mentors and someone that worked with me directly on my practice. And I learned a ton from Noel. And actually, I had gone to his Win-Win Associates seminar right before my injury, literally like 3 weeks before my injury. And I was in the process of doing his system and bringing on my first associate. And so love what you do, Noel, and love your system. And it's really one of the most effective associate systems that I've seen out there. There's a lot of different ways to do associates, right? There's different ways, different models, different things that you can do. And so talk us, through your your philosophy, the principles that you use when it comes to associates, and how that might differ from some other models.
Well, win-win is quite simply offering an associateship that the associate would want. Now, nobody ever went to chiropractic college dreaming about how wonderful it would be to work for Noel Lloyd or Bill Davis or any other chiropractor. We go to chiropractic college with dreams of helping people, having fun, and making a great living. And so the win-win formula is based on my clients offering to an associate a win-win associateship like they would want for one of their kids. So there's somebody who's on their side, on the side of the associate. Now, not doing the work for, because the associate has to do the work. If they don't do the work, they don't grow. But somebody who's facilitating that. So imagine this. We own the stadium. We own the team. We are the coach. We're the cheerleader, and we're the referee. Now, those are 5 jobs, but if you do those jobs well, the associate as the player in the sports metaphor learns to help a lot of people, have a lot of fun, and make great money. I mean, I've got associates who are, when I say I have them, my clients have associates who, when they first started, they thought, well, I don't know, I'll try this for a year. I've heard about associateships. And then 1-2 years into it, say, I want to work for this guy forever. And that's because they find a great environment. And by the way, that's not at the expense of the clinic owner who offers it. Because in win-win, there's more than enough success for everybody. So I think that this foundation of the win-win paradigm, I want my associates to get training in every single aspect of success in a chiropractic practice. I remember when you and I were coach and client, you had 2 interns in your practice, and we had a conversation about what they need to learn. I said they need to learn 3 things. They need to learn the technique. And coming out of NUCA, you have a great technique that requires that somebody be mentored in the technique. Number 2, they need to know management, how to help patients stay in a patient-valued relationship with their chiropractor and chiropractic. And then number 3, they needed to learn marketing. And I remember you had a young man and a young woman associate and intern. And we worked for that in that process. So we've got gobs of associates that are seeing 100, 200, even 300 patient visits a week that they have generated from their own marketing. And by the way, I saw one of your videos about using upper cervical marketing in order to help the associate grow his or her practice. And I'm super in favor of that. Because if you just feed your associate new patients, several bad things happen. One thing that happens that's bad is that they never appreciate what it is to get a new patient. But another thing is, if you feed them your new patient, they're not going to have the skill in order to help the patient convert and stay under chiropractic care that you do. Number 2, if you give your referrals away to your associate, that kind of hurts the feelings of the referrer. And I have seen that happen so many different times. So I believe that associates need to be trained in every single aspect. And my job as a chiropractic coach is to help busy, successful chiropractors take the skills that they have and get them organized in such a way that it can be an effective and fun curriculum.
Right.
So I was just speaking to a chiropractor. Her name is Kiri Kleinfelder. You know Kiri, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And Kiri gets 12 weeks off a year. She has busy, successful associates. She's going to set another year. She and I have been coaching client for over, I think this is our 23rd year. And she's going to break a record this year, get 12 weeks off. Her associates are thrilled with their position. So, I mean, That's what win-win is all about, is taking the busy, successful chiropractor who wants help, needs help. Number two, wants freedom, wants to be able to enjoy their success. And then number three, wants extra income. This is, and by the way, you can interrupt me because I'm kind of on a rant here, if you want. I think it's crazy to have one roof and one person under that one roof having to produce all of the overhead and all of the profit. And it makes sense to me that you would replicate your success in multiple associates under one roof so that the fixed costs are literally ground down to powder. So there's more than enough money for the associate to get a great paycheck and for the clinic director to do well as well.
That's right. That's right. And so this is the thing with this, right? Is I see this all the time where there's successful doctors and they are at or near capacity. And then they just stay there.
Yes.
Right? Like they stop. And they're at that same level for years or even decades.
Yes.
And it kills me because I'm like, what? You just need to learn a extremely important thing, which is how to mentor others.
Yes.
And that's ultimately what it's about, right? If you can learn the skill of being able to take what you've learned and pour it into another doctor, your practice is going to make so much of a larger impact on your community than you could ever do by yourself, right? Because you only have so much time. You can't go beyond the time that you have. It doesn't matter how good you are and how many staff members you bring on and all that kind of stuff. You're going to reach a capacity. And if you're good at what you do, then the skill you've got to learn is how to mentor others, right? It's the key to keep going with what you're trying to do.
So I was speaking to a young man in Portland, Oregon, and this was a long, long time ago. And he was calling me because he had heard that I had good success with associates, and he became a client. And then he says, there are three things that my associate does that drives me nuts. And then there are three things that he doesn't do that make me angry. And I said, hey, Scotty, have you told him? and he said, well, Noel, he should know. And I said, well, how's that working for us right now?
Right.
So I came up with this is an aphorism. You have no right to expect anything that isn't written down and discussed or taught. And if you hold yourself accountable to that in your relationship with your associates, then it makes onboarding an associate such a wonderful process because you get a chance to program, you get a chance to let them know what's acceptable, you get a chance to let them know. And one of the things that I do is I help people. By the way, this aphorism about you have no right to expect anything that isn't written down and discussed, that's one of about 26 different things that are so important to know. Because the busy, successful chiropractor can think, well, just do what I do. Well, you know what? It doesn't work that way.
No.
It really, and we get a bit myopic too, right? Because we forget how we struggled and how we failed and how we got up again and how we did this and how we did that.
Right.
Because we just think, well, I was instantly successful because, hindsight's perfect, but it doesn't have a great memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and that's it, man. It's, we talk about this a lot with our doctors too. It's like, if you have a personality driven practice, right? If it's all based on your personality, your charisma, your connection with the patients, then what you have is you have a treadmill practice, you have a vulnerable practice, and ultimately you have a misaligned practice because you can't go beyond yourself. And if anything happens to you, right? I'm the poster boy for things happen in life, right?
Right.
You can have a very successful practice and you can go one day One day, everything can change, right? Sickness can come upon you. Injury can come upon you. Tragedy in your family can happen, right? All these things can happen. If you don't have systems in place, if you don't have another doctor that can take care of patients, you're in trouble, right? And so you've got to be able to think beyond yourself and say, it can't just be all about me in this practice, or it's not going to work.
So the personality practice, you've got a great practice. It's a ton of fun. Everybody loves you. That's emotionally draining. Now, it can be fulfilling and wonderful, but day after day, it's like Groundhog Day.
Right.
And then what happens if you take that wonderful personality and take it to the beach for 2 weeks? The practice kind of deflates like a souffle.
Yep.
But if you train people on practices, like I mentioned, I was just literally the 10 minutes before I'm speaking to you, I was talking to Curie. She's going to Europe for a month. She's going to Europe for a month. Now, I know some doctors that have told me that they've just bitten the bullet and they've gone in and they took the 2-week practice. And one guy told me, and this is back when $50,000 was a lot of money. He said, I lost $50,000, not only in lost revenue, because I just, but the cost of the trip. And then the practice had hurt feelings. But if you have systems, if you've got a marketing system, if you have a system for your day one, a system for your day two, a system for handling returning visits, if you have a system for handling objections, then by definition, a system is something that you or a team member can train somebody else in. And it lives in a binder. And it lives someplace where somebody can refer to it and you can train out of it. By the way, I want to mention this before we go too deep in this. I'm going to be teaching Win-Win Associates in Atlanta in November 16, 17. And if somebody is interested, this is, and I've been told this by many, many people who have been in my program, that this is a life changer. So it's November 16, 17. If you go to my5star.com, that's my5star, all spelled out.com. We have a little survey for you to take. It's called the Associate Readiness Survey. Take that survey and we'll make sure that you get information regarding this particular seminar. But we cover the whole thing. And I am so grateful. I have some of my top producing people who've gone from $500,000 to $3.5 million. People have gone from 300, 400 patient visits to 1,000 patient visits, and not doing it at the end of their fingertips, but by adding multiple associates and seeing those multiple associates have absolutely wonderful practices. They come too, and I interview them, and people get a chance to ask them questions. So, I mean, I can tell you, if you're a busy, successful chiropractor, if you think I need help, number one. Number two, I'd like freedom, because those little people that run around my house that call me mommy or daddy, the little people that call me grandma or grandpa, those people are going to go off and they're going to be off in their separate lives, and you'll never have had the chance to make the memories that you look to, because the practice has you. You're a galley slave in your own practice.
That's right.
So come and join us in Atlanta. It's only $200. Oh, you know what? Here's the deal. If you go to that website and you sign up for that and you put in upper cervical marking, UCM. UCM is a special code. You got $100 off. You can come for $97. So it's my5star.com. Take the survey. We'll click you through to the registration and put in UCM, upper cervical marketing. You get $100 off, only $97.
That's cool. That's cool. So yeah, I mean, this is something obviously that I would definitely recommend. This is a no-brainer. $100, $97 that you're going to spend, and even giving our listeners a discount. I mean, you got to go to this. This is a must. I mean, even if you already have associates, there is so much good stuff here. So It's so
Especially,
much good stuff.
if you have an associate. So this guy called me and he's got 2 associates and he's a good guy and his associates are great people, but his associates are kind of stuck at a particular level. And
Yep.
we have a way of introducing them into what's called win-win. And the associate learns what he or she can do in order to build the practice and build their income. Concurrently, at the same time, the clinic owner is making more money and the associate is making more money and more patients are being served. Yeah, I talk about money and I think money is important because everybody wants to do as well as they possibly can do, but not at the expense of the patient. This is high quality, great chiropractic care. So introducing an existing associate into the win-win model is also the best way to motivate the associate. So I want you to think about it this way. You want the associate to have as much fun as he or she can, see as many patients as they can, and make as much money as they want while working for you. Now, I teach an opportunity for people to be able to do that. Now, I have associates who make $250,000. When I say I mean my clients do, who make $250,000 take home taxable income, take home taxable. Now, they produce for the clinic sometimes 3, sometimes 4 times that because they are in a facilitated associateship. So associates can make great money. And then how about this? You've got 3 or 4 associates under the same roof with a clinic director. So there's 5. Those 4 associates end up being a consortium. They cover for each other on vacation and sick days. They cover for the clinic owner when the clinic owner isn't there. In every single case, we've got 1 or 2 strong leadership associates who end up administrating or running the systems while the lead doctor, the owner doctor, is out enjoying his or her success. So you know Dr. Jamie Kramer, right? She's
Oh yeah.
another NUCA doc.
Yep.
So Jamie's been a client for 10 years and she became a client because she wanted to have a family. And Jamie was very successful when I met her. We had a wonderful practice. I mean, she's very, very dynamic, strong, smart, great woman. But she thought, what's going to happen to my practice when I have my maternity leave? Well, on her first maternity leave, her associate covered for her. She got an 17-week maternity leave. And that year they did 99% of Jamie's best every year. But her second maternity leave saw Jamie's practice break into the $1 million level, number one. Number two, they all 3 months during Jamie's mat leave, they broke records. They collected more money. They saw more patients. I've got some doctors that think, well, no one could ever break a record without me in the practice. That's not a very, very smart way to think.
Yeah.
I would rather be the coach. I would rather be the coach that coached an associate to surpass my numbers. Now that's kind of an ego lesson, but that's the person who gets the freedom. That's the person who gets the satisfaction. That's the person who also has associates who are thrilled and motivated because they know that the clinic owner is on their side.
That's right. And I want to talk about another group too, because this is something we've been running into quite a bit lately. Is doctors who have never thought through their legacy and how their practice is going to continue on without them.
Yes.
Right? So many times we see this now. I mean, we've been seeing this more and more lately is, doctors who are in their late 60s, early 70s, still in solo practice, have never thought this through. And they're finally starting to get to the place where they're realizing, like, physically, I'm not going to be able to do this forever, right? And now it's like, okay, now what do I do, right? And so, what we're talking about with doctors and bringing on associates and whatnot, a lot of this too. I mean, you got to do this earlier on in practice if you can, right? Start building these systems. Start building this life where the practice doesn't just depend on you, right? When you're in your 50s or when you're in your 40s or, earlier on. But what if you are in your late 60s? What if you are in your early 70s? Whatever. Now putting these systems in place becomes even more of an urgency, right? Like you've got to make this happen. You got to make it happen quick. So can you talk about that particular type of doctor and maybe speak to them? Because some of these docs that we talk to, they've been practicing for 40 years and they've always been in solo practice. And now they're finally thinking about, hey, I've got to be able to pass this on to somebody else.
Well, I talked to my clients initially about having such a great practice that it would be a sin if you didn't pass it on. Having such great skills that it would be just a crying shame if you didn't mentor. But mentoring somebody is, it's different than what most people think. And there are mentoring templates that make mentoring actually easy. And there's an interview process where you get the right person, and then we teach an onboarding sequence. You can have such a great relationship with somebody if you onboard them correctly. And if you don't, you can take somebody who had the potential of being an absolutely wonderful associate and really, really hurt the relationship. So I was just speaking last week, not this week, but last week with one of my clients. He's 67 years old. He has an independent contractor and an associate. He's looking for his third. And I said, Chuck, tell me, you've been with me. You just signed another work agreement. Are you seriously that happy with our progress so far? He said, the way that I'm practicing right now, I could go on because it's not all on me. It's not all on at the end of these fingers. And then I get a chance, to contribute to my independent contractor and also to develop my associate and learning about the win-win associateship. I could do this well into my 70s. Now, he also knows that if you have two associates and an independent contractor, you've got a pretty good chance of having a buyer in that group.
Yeah.
Or, and this is a little bit more complex, but a practice with 3 practicing chiropractors is much, much more attractive to sell on the market to somebody who wants to come in and have something that's a producing business rather than just a solo practice. So if you're 60 years old and your elbows are no longer 29, neither are your wrists or your low back, and you need help, maybe you're even playing injured, you need an associate. Well, Noel, I had associates before and it just didn't work out, and they were lazy, and they were all these. I tell those doctors all the time, it's probably because you use the old model that breaks. And when I mean breaks, nobody gets what they want. If you use win-win, it's super, super attractive. It works beautifully. Every single day I speak to people that tell me, hey, developing associates is totally different than what I thought it was. Number one, I've got one great profitable associate. Can I have another one? In fact, there's a phrase at 5-Star that we like to kick around, which is U plus 2. 2 associates can cover your practice real nicely without hurting themselves in their practice. And the senior associate can cover the vacation of the junior associate, and the junior can cover the senior. So there's freedom. I mean, there's this quality of life thing that's all wrapped up in win-win as well. So I want to say my5star.com one more time. I know that we're getting a little bit close to the end. My5star.com. And we're going to teach win-win associates. We're going to teach it in Atlanta, November 16, 17. If you come in and you register and you use UCM, upper cervical marketing, as the special code or golden ticket or whatever it is, you can get $100 off instead of $197. It's $97.
Yeah. And I encourage you to do that. If you're an upper cervical doctor out there, you're listening to this podcast, either you're in solo practice now or you already have associates, this is a no-brainer. Go down to Atlanta, get into this seminar for $97 with the UCM code and learn from Noel. He's been doing this as long as anybody within chiropractic. He knows he's got a really solid system. I've been learning for him. I learned from him for many years and continue to apply many of the things that he taught me. So thank you, Noel, so much for being part of the podcast today. Thank you for taking the time. Appreciate you. Appreciate your wisdom. And as we always say, go team upper cervical.